Welcome to the DTFprinting podcast. I'm Adrienne Palmer, editor-in-chief of DTFprinting. I'm here with Kevin Oakley, co-founder and chief revenue officer of Stoked on Printing in Las Vegas. Today we're chatting about replacing DTG with DTF, how to build online stores for clients, and what's needed for a safe printing environment. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining. Happy to have you here. Why don't you start and just give a little background about what you do at Stoked on Printing and what Stoked on Printing does?
Yeah, so Stoked on Printing started in 2011. We actually started just screen printing, and then that transitioned into embroidery, then into DTG, and now into DTF. So we have a couple different facets of our business. So I would still say that the screen printing embroidery side is still a lot more in that contract printing world, where we work with a lot of promotional product distributors. Whereas really our on-demand side is more focused on like the end customer and, more on company stores. And for me, I just, take care, I'm head of, the sales and marketing team. So, just working with both sides just to make sure that our marketing is in line and then, that our sales team is actually selling. So, yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. And you recently scaled back on DTG. I know you mentioned that was kind of part of your journey with the company and that you replaced it with DTF. Why was that decision made and kind of how is that going now?
Yeah, so that's correct. So, I think it's just really as you get into any new different type of decoration, you're really trying to find product market fit, so you're really trying to see who is using this technique and what's the best way for us to sell it. So for us, we saw, we really started with on demand in about 2018 and 2019. And during that time, there was a really big push for e-commerce. People based on Shopify, mostly Shopify, but, WooCommerce, any of these other things that were doing more on-demand printing instead of doing bulk printing. So with that, we kind of saw that as an opportunity to kind of go into that market and to, be a provider as well as, we built our own app, we built all this other stuff, really just to try to get a better cost per piece than we were with screen printing. But the reality of it was that the cost per piece went down so fast that it really became unsustainable to continue in that market with DTG because the consumable cost, time cost, all those things on DTG is just, it's dramatically higher than something like screen printing. So when you're starting to sell things at the same price as screen printing, it really just didn't make too much sense. So we kind of had to make, a really tough decision because we did, invest a lot into that space to really pull back, kind of take a second look. But with that came another opportunity of, hey, what can we use what we built as far as software, processes, all those things to possibly, serve another market. And that's really kind of where we push more into creating stores for companies and, some smaller brands and things like that.
Right. And that is the merch loop side of the business, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so instead of just using a different software service, you've actually created your own. And so you're building those online stores yourself. Can you just talk a little bit about that process and why it's maybe easier for you at where you are now to do that for yourself versus using a different software?
Yeah, I think, when you're thinking about, on demand, it really comes down to how can you get the order to the machines the fastest way possible. And there really wasn't a lot out there in terms of like an out of the box solution to do that. So that's really where we invested a lot into building our own so that we are able to create stores. Because again, a lot of our proposition is we are going to be creating a lot of these stores for free because we're getting, it's kind of just like a 24/7 order taker for these companies. So we really felt like there just wasn't something out there that we were able to leverage that free option, as well as getting it to our printers, getting it to the embroidery machines in the fastest way possible and the most efficient way. And, we still do use Shopify on some more complex builds, but we do have a merch loop app that we built for Shopify that we're utilizing inside of those Shopify stores.
How has that been on the customer experience side? Are you finding that you're able to grow your customer base or by having this option? What are they saying about it?
Yeah, I mean, people are really excited. I think there's a huge appetite for companies to kind of reduce their costs. Kind of like they're getting a lot of requests for new different types of swag and those types of things. So where the proposition we're able to fulfill to them is, hey, you no longer have to order 100 of every SKU of every size, any of those things, and you could have a lot more variety as well as not having to come out with that upfront inventory cost. So yeah, it's been really interesting. I think there's a lot of growth in a lot of markets. When you're starting to think about on-demand printing, that is outside of that e-commerce world. I think there's a lot of different niches that can be serviced there. If you look at Steven with Campus Ink, that's a huge niche. That he's able to utilize on demand for.
Right. Do you have any tips for people who are maybe considering this, going into doing something like this for their clients, especially even I think a lot of people that I've talked to is on the podcast are doing that maybe for local schools or sports teams. But I know you're doing that on an even higher scale for maybe some bigger brands. I know we had talked previously about even the Tao Group. So anyone who's maybe even starting out who already kind of has an idea to do this on a local level, like where they can go on maybe a higher level too.
Yeah, I would really look at your customer base now and just see like, is there a way to sell this into your current customer base? Because I think that was what was our biggest, if I could go back in time, I would have done that. I would have looked at, hey, what's a way that I can use on demand from our current customers instead of saying, hey, we're going to do the service to attract a brand new set of customers. Because what we found, it was just really disruptive, when you're thinking about, servicing two separate segments of customers, right? So we even in our contract side of the business, we work with PPDs who are focused on corporate apparel, so that's just really like what we're really good at. And we're really trying to go into this like cut and sew on demand, all these like different types of things. That was just the learning curve was so much higher and there's people so much further along. So my advice to, anybody who's looking to introduce on demand into their business is really like, hey, who's our customer base now? I'm going to talk to them and say, hey, would you guys be interested in this? Is this something that you have been thinking about, or, just explain the value propositions to them? And then go from there, and then you're able to scale up, accordingly to your base. And then as you can grow, you'll get those bigger opportunities as well.
That's good feedback. And obviously you mentioned that, your customers are happy with this option, and having that communication with them is really important to show like, we're thinking of doing this. Does this make sense? I see a lot of people who just lean into things before really talking to their customers. And that's really, there's so many different layers as to bringing on new equipment or finding new niches, but really talking to your customers is very important to make sure that the need is there.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's, I think it's one of those things where we always want to kind of guess what the customer wants when it's pretty easy to just send them an email or set up a call and just say, hey, this is what we're thinking, that, would this work for you? And people love to get their feedback, so, yeah, I would say that's a big lesson learned over the last 5 years is, talk to your customers and really make sure what you're introducing aligns with their needs.
Do you have a core group of customers, even maybe like a VIP group that you're constantly communicating with, or do you kind of do that on a broad approach?
Yeah, so we do it on a broad approach. We try to send out, quarterly reviews and things like that. But, we're always asking for feedback, always asking for reviews from like our customers. And again, this side of it, it's fairly new for us. It's probably about a year since we kind of exited that e-commerce side. So we're constantly asking like, hey, how did you find this? What were you looking for? What was the reason you came to us? And then, that helps not only with communication and building relationship with them, but that's also how you're able to craft messaging to get more customers like them. I think that was another thing. It's just like, man, our corporate customers are our easiest customers, and they pay on time. They're professional. They are great communication, and it's like, oh, well, we should just try to get more customers like them. And so understanding what they're going through on a daily basis. And the pain points that brought them to you in the first place is exactly the bait you can use to go attract more of those customers.
Right. Yeah. You kind of found your niche in that customer base and it's working out for you. And you're kind of massaging what that communication looks like and what they're expecting. In terms of getting those reviews, is that just an email that's sent out after, or do you have a system set in place that, messages every couple of months, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a message, and then we'll also ask the account managers to ask for, after a big project or something like that, or a store launch or anything, we'll ask them for a review personally too.
Mhm. Are you sharing any of those testimonials or feedback online somewhere, or is that more of an internal thing?
Yeah, no, we'll put them on landing pages. We'll ask them if we're able to use it inside of ads. So we'll create LinkedIn ads or things like that. To and with testimonials, I mean, it's super powerful. The what people read about you is so much more powerful than what you can tell them about yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, we find that. I mean, you go on and just like, well, let's see, Google review. What did they have to say about this company? All great things. All
Yep.
right, I'm going to work with you. All bad things, maybe not so much.
Exactly. Everything could be buttoned up, and then it's just like, well, you have 2.5 stars, and it's and your experience up to that point could be great, but then you're just thinking like, when's the other shoe going to drop? And then I'm going to get that 2.5 star experience.
Right. So a little bit back to the DTG to DTF switch. Do you have any DTG in-house currently?
We do. Yeah. So our initial thought was we were going to go completely 100% from DTG to DTF. And, we just found that there were some projects, there were some customers, there were some designs that really just didn't translate exactly how we wanted it to for DTF. So we still do have about 3 DTGs in-house.
And so with the move to DTF, was that a big process for your team? I mean, moving a little bit digitally to DTG, there was a little bit of a jump there, but with DTF, how has that gone, especially on a technical aspect for yourself and your team?
Yeah, so technically it was pretty easy. Like it's just, really instead of sending to this printer, we're sending to that printer. So a lot of the software that we had was able to be translated over to DTF. But I think it was definitely just a learning curve, just like it is with any decoration of just what to look out for, what to troubleshoot. Like we were getting some problems and we're like, we thought this was just going to work this, way. I would say that just that learning curve, it wasn't as steep as going from screen print to DTG. But there was definitely a learning curve there as far as what to send there, what to send to DTF, what to keep with DTG. The workflow is definitely different because when you're speaking about an on-demand perspective, you're scanning at the DTG, it rips right into the printer. You put the t-shirt on and it prints, right? Whereas now you're having to marry a DTF transfer to the t-shirt. So there's just an extra step, and it's just kind of printing a barcode in an additional place to help marry those two.
Right. And have your customers found any difference in this? Did you kind of communicate with them? You mentioned you communicate with them often. Did you say like, we're moving to this new technology? Can they tell a difference?
Yes, we did. And, I would say that the change from the customers that were used to DTG definitely had more of opinions when they went to DTF versus customers who started with DTF. Customers who started with DTF don't really know the difference between the two. But there was definitely some customers who were like, yeah, I'd prefer our product stay with DTG at the moment until we can, really test out more things with DTF. But yeah, I would say at this point, we're onboarding customers as DTF customers, and you don't quite hear it. That's just like the reality of the product that they're getting. And as long as they're happy with the quality, they don't say, hey, I wish this was DTG or screen print or anything like that.
Yeah. And you mentioned by doing print on demand with DTG, it was just costing you more. So do you have a pretty drastic price difference for your customers between screen printing DTG and DTF?
It's not so much more as a price drop versus just keeping the prices the same instead of having to do constant price increases. So we were able to just say, hey, we're going to keep our prices flat because our cost per piece went down quite a bit once we moved to DTF. So that we were able to make the money that we were hoping to make initially on DTG. And so they just didn't experience price increases.
Right. Right. And so with this change and kind of making that move, do you have any tips for people who are kind of in that same spot where they are offering print on demand? They were a screen shop, they brought on DTG, and now maybe they're considering bringing DTF in-house. Maybe your thoughts on bringing equipment in versus still ordering those transfers and kind of seeing how things go the next couple years.
Yeah. I think for us, we went the route initially to order transfers in. And I think the flexibility of printing in-house just offers so much more like expediency,
Mm.
when you need a transfer, sometimes you need it like right then, you can't wait the 3 to 5 days, but
Right.
there really are some great transfer houses out there right now that it is, you could try it out, get it in your customers' hands and see what they think, is what I would say. So we do a lot, even, we do on the on-demand side, but we do a lot of bulk things. And we found that there was a lot of things that we were screen printing that we were like, hey, this would actually be really good for DTF, such as bags. We do tons of duffel bags, And so what we did was we said, hey, let's get some transfers in. Let's do an order. Let's clear it with the customer first, but let's do an order with transfers on these bags, get it in their hands. And they loved it. And they're like, let's move forward with that. And that program alone allowed us to have the cost of the DTF printer paid for. So
Wow.
then we're able to now leverage that into some more opportunities like on demand. And we're not so much tied to if it doesn't work for on demand, we're stuck with the machine or we're stuck with those costs.
Right. That's a great story. Very cool that they were, ready to say like, yeah, test it out and see. And then the final product, it was something that they were happy with. How are you choosing between the 3 different technologies? And is that something that like you were deciding on as like a higher level, or is that something their production manager, when they see it come in, they're making that decision?
Yeah. So it's really, as we are onboarding products, so on the on-demand side, so we do a lot of polyesters. So polyesters just immediately go to DTF, just because with DTG, you can't really do it.
Right.
And then from there, there's just certain contents like garment dyed. Some colors don't do well with DTG. So we'll kind of push those to DTF. And then on the bulk side, it's really project by project basis, right? So it depends on the artwork, the quantity, and the product it's going on. Is a way we'll kind of push it to one way or the other. And we're still finding projects all the time where we're like, this is going to be an 11 color print. And it's like, actually, that would look really good at DTF. So let's try it. Again, we have the printer in house, so we can print off one transfer of each. We could do it and we could show the customer, and if they're happy with it, then we move that way. Versus, doing an 11 color front and 11 color back on 50 pieces, so ultimately saving them some money too.
Right. It's nice that you not only have the experience just by being in business for so long, and having screen printing background and then moving to DTG, DTF, how all of the different technologies work. But then, as you mentioned, being able to do some prototypes and some testing just right then and there, like you can make that decision pretty quickly if the customer is on board.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to see with DTF technology in the next few years? There's obviously a lot of changes. It's still in its infancy, but anything as you have the equipment now in-house that you'd like to see from manufacturers or really anyone in the industry?
Yeah, I think like reliability has been kind of our biggest problem so far. So just having and that's not just with DTF, that's just digital printing in general. When you're thinking about screen printing, like these machines are very robust, right? Like they don't go down very often. And whereas with digital, it's something like there's a lot more upkeep. You have to have somebody on staff who's ready and trained to be able to hop in and change heads, change all these maintenance tanks, change all these things. Or else you're going to be drowning in tech fees and you're going to be down, So I just think like having more robust, reliable machines for it would be like a great step forward, and it's going to get there. To your point, it's just getting started, so 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to be looking at such different technology that, I have great hope for it for sure.
Yeah. And there are some people in this conversation who are kind of waiting for that technology to come before diving in. Do you feel like you got in a little bit too soon? Are you happy with how things are? And then maybe in the next couple of years, you'll be able to upgrade or purchase something that is even better?
Yeah, I mean, I think with digital and with DTF, I think we got in just before it was too soon, which I think is a great spot to be, because you are going to be dealing with some of the limitations and some of the issues from being, in somewhat of that early adopter stage. However, you're going to be so much further ahead by the time that the technology comes around. We're going to be so much further ahead than somebody starting out at that point. So we're going to have a lot more workflows. We're going to have a lot more customers that are used to the product, that we're just going to be that much further ahead. So I don't think it's too soon now. I think it's the right time, honestly, for people to give it a shot.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, that experience that you'll have, and then whenever new products come along, you can make that decision based on what's available. But you've already got your customers vetted and interested in it, and you are constantly, tinkering and figuring out what works best for Stoked on Printing. So you're going to have the years probably of experience and background, which will be good.
Yeah, for sure.
So you worked with me on an article about DTF safety. Thank you so much for answering those questions. Listeners, you can find it at DTFprinting.com. But for you, what is needed to create a safe environment for yourself and your staff when printing specifically to direct to film?
Yeah, something I kind of talked about quite a bit inside of that article is really creating a clean environment, right? Which I think goes hand in hand with having a safe environment, because again, in screen printing shops, we could kind of get a bad rep for being kind of dirty, right? So I think it's more common when you walk into a shop and it's clean and you're really surprised.
Yeah.
So versus walking into a shop and it's kind of dirty and you're like, okay, it's ink, it's whereas when you're really thinking about digital, you really need a crisp, clean environment. Because that is just going to result in your machines staying up longer and having a lot less maintenance. So with that, again, keeping areas clear of wires and tripping hazards and things like that, having it be air conditioned, having air filters, right? So again, with DTF, you have powders, you have these things that you really need to be venting out, so having a little bit more open air filters, and again, no liquids, around, right? Just all of those things just add up to just your machines running better. And again, will go hand in hand with your employees feeling safer around the machines and it giving you a better product.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, just coming from the wide format side for so many years, I was going into shops that were just like pristine and very clean. And then I moved over to the screen printing side and I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Yep.
I remember, I think even my first impression show, I was just like walking around and somebody just had like a thing of nachos on top of a machine. And I was just like, what is
can't
happening?
Do this in digital printing.
No,
Yeah.
I was just so not used to that. So everything, you're saying is right. There are definitely like more strict guidelines as to when you're printing digitally, but you want to have a clean, safe environment no matter what, I guess, really at the end of the day for your employees.
Most definitely. And it makes them feel better. They are more comfortable coming to work. They want to come to work more often. And it's something that we always made a point of in our screen printing shop. Just keep it clean. Like, again, it's just like all those micro actions throughout the day. So yeah, but to your point, it's when you're now dealing with DTF printing, there's, when you're feeding from the, into the shaker unit, it's like you got that open gap there, that you have to kind of stay clear of. And if you're not keeping track of where your roll's at, it could start pulling the printer, which creates a safety issue, so there's a lot more training and a lot more things that came along with it too.
Right. Are you at all concerned? I mean, we talked about this being in its infancy. I'm getting a lot of questions about safety in general. Do you feel like you're at all concerned about maybe DTF powder not being safe, or maybe more information coming on later that maybe there's something that we could be doing about it now?
I'm not super versed on it, but I'm not too concerned about it. And again, when it comes to that, we've been doing screen printed transfers for quite a bit. So we've been using, transfer powder for quite a bit of time. Again, you just want to make sure that you're in a ventilated area, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just the same for anything. You just want to make sure that if there are any fumes or if there's any residuals, that it's getting pulled out of the air, and it's not in like really closed environment.
Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing too, not only from other print shop owners, but manufacturers, people who have been in the space. The ventilation is key and most important. And of course, you can wear a mask if your space isn't designed for that. But it's something really to consider when you're bringing DTF in house. Is do you have the environment that's going to be safe, and do you have a possibility to have a well ventilated area? Because that seems to be the number one thing that people should be considering.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just thinking, when I was at your shop last, I, for some reason, got caught up. It was at an event after Printing United. I got caught up just like taking shirts off the dryer. And I've always joked with DTF, like if I can heat transfer a shirt, like anybody can, but like that's me on the screen printing side. I can take things off the dryer, like, and that's pretty much where my skill level
That's it. Yep.
ends. Like, so it's like, yeah, maybe my thing is like heat or something because
That's right. Yeah. Hey, it's an important job. It needs to happen. It needs to happen,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so funny. But I know it's not specific to DTF, but for people who are maybe considering adding on different options for their customers. I know you do a lot with promotional products. Can you just talk a little bit about that role of your business and how that works?
Yeah. And there's also, we've actually been experimenting with doing some DTF transfers onto promotional products to kind of offer a little bit more on demand, drinkware and some of these other things. But yeah, I mean, I'd honestly say to any shop out there right now, if you're not selling promotional products, you're leaving a lot of money on the table because we're, again, something that kind of we slept on for a long time. But the second you sell something that you didn't have to produce, it shows up directly to the customer and you just get to keep the extra money. It's kind of an insane thing because you're like, wow, I'm working so hard out here on the shop, or we're having to do so much of this stuff, and we have all these people and these that like our margins are so much lower. But yeah, I would completely, right now, next week is going to be the PPAI show. And I'm sure by the time this airs, it might already have happened. But if you get a chance, go to an ASI show, go to a PPAI show, talk with the suppliers and look at all those things. And again, just look at your customer base. When we were on the e-commerce side, it didn't necessarily line up, like as far as some of these promotional products went. But, when we started to say like, well, we are working with corporate people, we are working on these corporate stores, and it just really lines up with them and their business to have promotional products.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How are you working with those outside vendors or maybe one vendor? I know I've had some conversations with people who were like, at the end of the day, it's easier for us to do this in-house because we haven't had the best experience with outside vendors. Like, how have you gotten to a point where you're really happy with how that looks?
Yeah, I'd honestly say that we've had very little negative experiences when we're dealing with suppliers. But, again, it's just vetting them out. ASI does a really great job of creating I think it's like a top 40 supplier list. So I would just look at those top suppliers, and they're doing some serious revenue, and they're doing, they're serious business, so their customer support's great. And I would just, when I'm looking for a product, I'd go to that list, and start there, because they're very reputable. And sometimes they're a lot more put together than we are, so it's a nice partner to have. But yeah, we use ASI. So we use the ESP website, and we just go on there and we search for the products, and you're able to give your customers a lot of different options pretty quickly.
Yeah. What are some of the top products that your customers are looking for in 2024?
Drinkware is a huge one for us, because we don't do any UV printing in house, or screen printing onto drinkware. So we sell quite a bit of drinkware through promotional product suppliers, because it's one of the top categories inside of promotional products outside of wearables and bags and things like that. So we're doing that. And then again, like I said, we're kind of experimenting with doing some DTF transfers onto, mugs and tumblers and things like that to include into our on-demand company stores. And it's actually been taking off quite a bit, and again, we got it out to the customers. We just said, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like this is good? And they're like, we love this. Yeah, this is great. And the fact that they don't have to order 100 of them, it's even better for them. So I think there's going to be a lot more of those opportunities coming up when it comes to DTF transfers or even just, direct printing in the future.
Right. Yeah. No, it's really interesting that you're able to kind of test that out and see what that looks like for you right now. What is that differentiator between maybe bringing on more of a UV direct to print option and doing what you're doing now with just the DTF machine, printing onto transfers and then adhering it to a mug or a drinkware?
I think it's just the volume, so again, kind of going back to lessons learned from, going into DTG is really like, is there a cost-effective way that we could start offering this to our customers that does not include a very large capital expense? Because some of these machines, especially once you get into UV printing, you're looking at possibly $200,000 for some of these printers. So you really need to keep those things moving and keep those things running. So we're just working now with the transfers to say at a certain point, this is just going to be not viable production wise to keep up. So at that point, we'll go to UV printing. And to be quite honest, I don't know what that is at the moment, but it's definitely going to be hundreds of drinkware pieces a day for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'll be interested to see what that looks like for you in the next couple of years. And I'm sure just even in DTF printing, like we're covering just apparel right now. Like it'll be interesting to see if that will be something that we'll be covering in the future as that grows and becomes more of an apparel decorator's, item of choice or technology of choice. So yeah, it'll be cool to see where that goes for Stoked on Printing and then the industry in general.
For sure. Yeah. We'll keep you updated, as it keeps going for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Kevin, this has been great. Before I get some of your, Instagram handles and all that, is there anything else you'd like to say about DTF printing or where Stoked on Printing is going to be going in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So, DTF is definitely not leaving the building. That's for sure. And we're just, again, super excited just to see as new companies come into the space, as more printers are available, just how much better this whole thing is going to get. But yeah, we're really focused on demand. We haven't given up on that. And again, just marrying that with our bulk side, so just to have options for our customers, so that when they walk in the door, we're able to say, yes, we have a solution for your problem. So that again is going to be very much around on-demand DTF, and as well as embroidery on demand as well too.
Yeah, awesome, great. Well, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so we post. We used to post a lot more regularly to our Instagram, but we're going to be getting back into that. So that's going to be Instagram.com /Stoked on Printing. You can find us also at merchloop.com. As well as if you do have a Shopify, you're looking for an on-demand provider, we still do have our MerchLoop app inside the Shopify marketplace. So you just search that once you're in the App Store. And then, of course, StokedOnPrinting.com. So we have tons of products. I think at the last check, we have 200,000 products loaded on that site. If you're just looking for, some bulk orders.
And I'm seeing you a lot on LinkedIn too, posting a lot of business tips and screen printing tips and DTF tips. Can people find you there as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just search for me, Kevin Oakley, on LinkedIn, and also on our Stoked on Printing page. We're going to be focusing a lot of content there. A lot of lessons learned from my end, as well as just, kind of updates, what we're doing, and some cool things we're seeing for sure.
Yeah, it's always cool to see your updates and posts there. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kevin.
Thanks so much, Adrian, for having me. And yeah, we're really excited about DTF, and again, appreciate the opportunity for being on here.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, we'll catch you on the next episode of the DTF Printing podcast. In the meantime, head to DTFprinting.com to discover new ways to grow your print business. Thanks for listening.